and tell me when. Give me a go. Good?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Good morning and welcome to the Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village Tenants Association, December the 10th meeting. And I'm Susan Steinberg, I'm president. I want to give you an idea of today's program. After a quick introduction to Tenant Association board members, those who were able to make it and didn't have work conflicts, when I call their name, I'm going to ask them to give a wave. We're going to have Keith Powers give some opening remarks about our theme, which is farewell and hello. Farewell to Carolyn Maloney and Brad Hoyleman, and hello to Kristen Gonzalez and Gerald Nadler. And then we're going to hear some brief presentations from our other elected representatives, Harvey Epstein, Mark Levine, our Manhattan Borough President, and Kyla Tide, who's chair of Community Board 6, and then Keith is also going to do some presenting. After that, we're going to have some rather hard-hitting questions, a Q&A, so you really want to stick around for that. So, okay, a quick hello from the board, and I call your name, give a wave. We have, and I'm just saying this in order as I see it, Sherry Kirschenbaum, wave, Ann Greenberg, who's our Vice President of External Affairs, Denise Faverol, Jonathan Derrico, who's our newest board member, Al Doyle, who's probably our most long-standing board member, and Adam Liggio, who's our treasurer. So, okay, Keith, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, everyone, thank you for spending your Saturdays with us. And always thanks to the Tenants Association for your advocacy on behalf of my neighborhood, and our community, and certainly some notable wins here this year that I know we'll talk about, but that would not have been done without the real steadfast work of the Tenants Association, but of course also our fellow elected officials here as well. Unfortunately and sadly, today we're also saying goodbye in some fashion or form to two of them who have been our absolute champions over the last X amount of years, you name it. And that's our Senator Brad Hoyleman and our Congressmember Carolyn Maloney. We're also saying hello to two new ones that are representing us, our new Congressmember Jerry Nadler and our new State Senator Kristen Gonzalez. I wanted to first just say a few words about my friends, Senator Hoyleman and Congressman Carolyn Maloney. And for starters, I want us to say it's been an honor and pleasure always working with you guys to represent my community and this community. Congressmember Maloney has been a tremendous leader and inspiration here for all of us on the East Side and in Washington. More recently working as the chair of the Oversight Committee and doing her work in the past on important financial protection laws. All demonstrate her legacy, as well as the enormous accomplishments for us here in this community, the Second Avenue subway that she fought so hard for, and something I talk about often, which is her a tremendous advocacy for 9/11 responders and their health care, which can never be understated. And of course, our recent efforts to defeat the CHP plant here in Stuyvesant Town was, largely and gratefully supported by her as well. I cannot say enough about our Congressmember. She has been such a dear friend. And I always say, before I get to respond to an issue, I get a call from Congressmember Maloney, who already has a game plan about what we need to be doing to attack it, and has been such a great partner and friend. So she's heard me say this a few times recently, but I want to say again, on behalf of all the residents of Stuyvesant Town, thank you always to Congressmember Maloney for everything you have done for us, this community, the city, the state. And then my friend Senator Hoyleman, who is just moving west. He's just going west. But I think anybody who's been here for the last few years as he's represented us has known that when there has been a fight, Senator Hoyleman has been there. When he's not crafting what has always seemed to be numerous new laws and great laws on behalf of New Yorkers, he's also been making sure that our community has, alongside our other representatives, has a voice in Albany. And I think notably when it comes to 2018 rent laws that changed many of our lives in a significant way, his support for those and other endeavors ahead are always appreciated. And the good news is we kind of keep him because he's going to still be in Albany. We lose him locally, but Brad, we know you'll be fighting for us no matter whether you represent us or not, and really deeply appreciate that. And of course, there's news here as well. We have friends that are joining us as well. We have our Congressmember Jerry Nadler I see on here, and I believe we'll be joined by our state senator-elect Kristen Gonzalez. I think, many of you are going to be familiar with Congressman Nadler from his years of service here in Manhattan and in Washington, but we are, of course, looking forward to continue to work with him on the issues impacting us. And we will be joined also by Kristen Gonzalez, who will be representing us in the state Senate in a very, very big and broad district that includes Stuyvesant Town, and looking forward to work. Oh, she's here. I see her. Looking forward to work her. Welcome, Senator, almost Senator Gonzalez. And what we know is alongside Brad, Senator Gonzalez is going to be doing the very, very important work fighting for tenants and fighting for tenant protections. We did a lot in 2018, but we have more to do. And I know she's going to be a champion for us. And we're lucky to have somebody who understands tenant rights and understands what it means to be a tenant here in New York City and how important those are. So on behalf of everyone here in Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper, we want to welcome you both to the team and to all the big issues we have. We will be keeping everybody busy. I can promise you guys that, but we know you're up for it, and we're very excited about that. So I'll end it there because I don't want to go on for too long, but just want to say welcome to the new guys and to our champions, Brad, to Carolyn. You are always our representatives too. You're always our friends, and we are so deeply appreciative of you guys being so good to our community for such a long time. Thank you, guys.
Carolyn, what stands out in your mind for the times that you have been representing our community? What things do you feel kind of like the greatest hits, or what would you like to say to us today?
Well, I feel very much, Susan, in addition to thanking you and Keith and your whole leadership team, that I haven't gone very far in my life because I began working for Stuyvesant Town on the city council, worked on it the whole time I was in Congress, and I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to be a phone call away. I love the community. Many of you may notice that I always trick-or-treated with my kids there, campaigned there with my kids. I love the open space, community, the people. I wouldn't be surprised if I got on the waiting list and tried to move in there because I like it so much. And I do want to say that I began my really government career working for the Housing Committee in New York State Legislature. So I interacted with all of the housing organizations across the city in that job alone, for the MCI, the Emergency Tenant Protection Act, the rent control. And I can say without a doubt, the most organized, the most outstanding, the most unified, the most diversified tenant organization in the whole city, the strongest, is Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper. You're an outstanding organization. Thank you, Al Doyle, for your leadership, and Susan for your leadership. And we've taken on the big fights. We took on 2 big fights that people thought we were going to lose, that there was no way we could win. Number one, it's the permitting of the polluting power plants. Power plants come in with all kinds of power and money, and we beat them. And I do want to share with you that the governor will be signing, I hope, a law that is very similar to the one that Keith and I worked on, which said in permitting, you don't just look at, right now the state just looks at the pollution from one stack, what that's doing. It forces them to look at all of the stacks so that you see the damage that it's doing. So that bill is passing in New York State. It got out of the legislature, the Justice and Power Plant Permitting Act, and Grijalva's and my Environmental Justice for All Act addresses that federally. But New York State, we must urge the Kathy Hochul, I'm going to write her today, to sign that important law so they will never be able to put another polluting power plant in Stuyvesant Town. And I want to applaud Keith's work and leadership with that with Blackstone, you did a great job. And then housing. Housing was always a fight. The rent increases, the MCI increases, all of the efforts. But when it was sold and we organized and brought the tenants together to fight for fair treatment for the tenants, I'm very proud of doing something most people don't even know about. I got the regulator of the Fannie and Freddie, who was Mel Watt, a good friend of mine. We'd served together for years in Congress. And he came out with a decree that Fannie and Freddie would not finance anything unless the tenants agreed to it and the mayor of the city of New York agreed to it. It gave us unparalleled historical leverage in negotiating a fair deal for the tenants. So I'm proud of doing that. But I tell you, I just love the focus on quality of life and citizenship and friendship that has always been part of Stuyvesant Town. It has been a thrill and a privilege of my life to work with you, be friends with you. And as I said, I will always just be a phone call away for anything that's of concern and of interest to you. So I thank you for the opportunity to be part of your team and to be part of your efforts to preserve the community, make it better, make it safer, make it affordable, and fight for that affordability. And with that, I yield back to one of the greatest tenant leaders of all time and council members and really leadership team.
Thank you very much. I'm supposed to hold the questions to the end, but this is a perfect moment, Carolyn. You have always been, to me, you must have been the model for the Energizer Bunny. I have never seen you stop for a second. You seem to have boundless energy. Are you going to take some time to exhale now, or are you going to jump into something else?
No, in fact, I just got off of a candidates forum, and I was just elected the New York State president of the National Organization for Women.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations.
And designated the Equal Rights Ambassador for the Ms. Foundation, and will be heading the board for the Equal Rights Amendment. And we're trying to get a vote in Congress in the next 5 years. 5 years feels like 5 years. Sometimes a day feels like a year in Congress. You can get so much done or face so many obstacles. We're trying to get a vote in the Senate on removing the deadline on the Equal Rights Amendment. If we could get that, then we could enforce equal pay for equal work. We could protect our women from sexual violence. We could fight the Dobbs decision with more strength. So I feel it's very, very important for women in our country to be part of the Equal Rights Amendment. So I'll be working on that too. And there's more to come.
Oh, wonderful.
But that's just today.
Wonderful. Good to know. Okay, thank you very much. We just love having you with us, serving it.
I have other meetings I've got to run to.
Okay.
And job interviews, so I can't stay till the end, but I can tell you I'm a phone call away if there's any way I can help. And I, of course, wish my good friend Jerry Nadler all the success. He's fortunate to now represent one of the best neighborhoods and some of the most interesting, intelligent, exciting people in the whole world.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol, and have a great day. Brad, you're on.
Susan, great to see you. Great to see you, everyone. It's a bittersweet moment for me, of course, because I began my political career basically at 16th Street and First Avenue, standing on that street corner as Keith and Harvey and Jerry and Carolyn Maloney all know. That's a favorite spot to speak to voters, as well as the borough president. Well, let me just say that I feel like my entire political career could be framed by Peter Cooper Stuyvesant Town. And I want to give a shout out to Councilmember Powers for his friendship. I didn't think there'd be anyone who could do as good a job as Councilmember Gorodnick, because he left with such acclaim. But short of writing a book, Keith Powers has done it. So I know he's working on the manuscript. The manuscript as we speak. And let me say that Harvey Epstein is such a mensch and a wonderful colleague. We'll be continuing to collaborate. It's been a pleasure to work with Congresswoman Maloney, particularly on issues like the CHP plant. choice and other issues that are important to our community. But you have an amazing congressman coming in, of course, and Jerry Nadler. And I just want to thank him from the bottom of my heart, from my husband's and my personal appreciation for his passing the Respect for Marriage Act last week. And what a historic moment, and so representative of all the work Congressman Nadler has done over the years for the LGBTQ community, but for so many areas as chair of the Judiciary Committee. And then Kristen Gonzalez is a wonderful, young, energetic, intelligent, and already has so much experience in organizing, which is what you need when you're, as my colleagues can attest to, Susan, as you know, what you need in a leader of one of the largest tenant organizations in the city is someone who can organize the heck out of an issue, and she's certainly there. So I am very grateful for all of their support. If I had to talk about like what I'm most proud of, certainly when I first came in, Susan, and Al and all of us and Ann, we were all scrambling. The mere phrase CW Capital, like I kind of sends chills up my spine. But their attempts to increase rents and the Roberts decision, some of those rent increases were $900 more in 2019, and that was just basically eviction by another name. I had barely unpacked my office, taking over from Senator Dwayne, when we were holding press conferences, sending letters, anything we could do. And we finally got CW Capital to back off of that horrible plan. And nearly 10 years later, and a different set of billionaire owners later, we have taken on the current landlord together to make sure that Peter Cooper Stuyvesant Town continues to have fresh air and a clean environment, which is what we all are entitled to. In fact, we passed a law that says exactly that. Of course, the New York Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and the Environmental Bond Act and our amendment on clean air and water. So Albany is really helping to lead on that issue in partnership with our federal and city electeds. But I really have to say the biggest success of the last 10 years has been passing the 2019 Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act, which finally closed those loopholes that real estate was using to gut our rent regulated program. We were losing tens of thousands of rent regulated units. Many of them were becoming unaffordable through rent hikes until the Tenants Association flexed their muscle. When you guys came to Albany, I still have that photo. I reprint it as often as I can of the TA in front of the Empire Complex, and you helped make the case for that really important legislation and saved people's homes. And now, thanks to those efforts, we have one of the best tenant rights laws in the nation. I was very honored to pass the Tenant Safe Harbor Act, which prevented folks from being evicted during the pandemic. And that wouldn't have been possible either without the hard works of the Tenants Association. Just a couple of other things, if you would indulge me, since this is my last meeting. And by the way, this is my 10th meeting with you. Access to justice is an important issue for me as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I passed the Child Victims Act and the Adult Survivors Act, which we see working right now with over 750 former incarcerated women being able to file lawsuits because they were sexually abused in prison, in New York state prisons, when they're supposed to be under the care and authority of the state. It's really unacceptable, but that's going to make a big difference in the way we treat our incarcerated individuals and give these women a chance at justice and hold people accountable. I'm so proud on women's rights, Senator Krueger's Reproductive Health Act, and the work I've done with her on spotlighting those so-called crisis pregnancy centers, one of which is on 14th Street that kind of lulls young people into their grips and basically is a sham fake abortion clinic where they're more or less forced into carrying their carrying a pregnancy to term when they might not want to. I'm very proud of the work we did in public health. Of course, we all came together, and again, Keith and Harvey and the Tenants Association and Congressman Maloney and the two borough presidents around COVID, and just the work we did with the landlord, and credit to them for their efforts and helping distribute food and PPE to parts of our district that didn't include Stuytown. I really think that was a wonderful effort. I was proud to pass legislation that requires young people to get the childhood vaccines and closes a loophole that allowed non-medical exemptions, which again, another sham that resulted in over 1,000 kids getting sick during an outbreak of measles. So that was a very important effort, and I think it's going to have reverberations down the line. Our efforts in public education, we finally fulfilled the promise of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit. New York City finally has the funds it deserves and students deserve because of that famous lawsuit, and really proud to move that forward. And on transit congestion pricing, we're going to fight to make sure that Stuyvesant tenants are held harmless with congestion pricing. We've already done that with a perimeter around Manhattan, and folks who are lower income can receive a tax credit, but we've got more work to do in that regard, but it's going to help fund our mass transit and keep our subways moving. And then finally, I'll say that, of course, the CHP plant and our effort in climate was so important, but I just think that's so representative of the collaboration that we all share. Elected officials, as you know, Susan, can be competitive, but it's competitive for the right reason, because we want to do the best for our local community. And the men and women who have served this district are the best of public service. So what an honor for me to share in that. And let me just do one more thing. It would not be a closing chapter of an elected official's service if he or she didn't have a proclamation to share with with such an amazing organization as the Peter Cooper Stuyvesant Town Village Tenants Association. So just to read a few words, and Sam Vasquez and David Kruger, my colleagues who worked at Peter Cooper Stuytown, just think the world of the Tenants Association and had a hand in writing this. But suffice to say, it's been an honor of a lifetime to serve and fight alongside STPC VTA and all the hardworking tenant leaders that make up the board and membership of this storied institution during my tenure representing you in the New York State Capitol. And now therefore be it proclaimed that I, New York State Senator Brad Hoylman, recognize that members past and present of the Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village Tenants Association are worthy of our highest esteem, and that I, New York State Senator Brad Hoylman, declare today, Susan, today, December 10th, the SantaCon to be Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village Tenants Association Appreciation Day in New York State's 27th Senate District. The last time Peter Cooper Stuytown will be in the 27th Senate District.
That is so sweet, Brad.
You can hang this in a place of honor, wherever that may be, Susan. Again, such a pleasure to see everyone, and I really will be working closely with Assembly Member-elect Gonzalez, and already am doing so. So again, I'm only a phone call away, only a city bike ride away, and I'll be with you every step of the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brett, and I'll see you at a SantaCon bar pretty soon. All right, we now would like to hear from Jerry Nadler. Give us, just a few minutes of your thoughts going forward.
Well, thank you very much. Let me tell you a little about myself first. First of all, my family were among the first families in the first building in Stuyvesant Town. I remember living there well, although I moved away from Stuyvesant Town when I was 4 years old, so I don't really remember it that well. But I've I made it a mission from the time I first got involved right after college to form tenants associations and block associations. I was instrumental in forming the Park West Village Tenant Association, for example. I've worked closely with all the tenant associations, at Park West Village, Silver Towers, all of the others in my district, and I certainly look forward to working closely with the tenant association here. I've concentrated in the assembly. I was in the assembly for 16 years before I was elected to Congress. I was the first and so far only one of two males named Legislator of the Year by now. That goes way back to 1977, I think it was. In Congress, I've been, and I was very active in tenants law in the assembly and in mass transit. I created the mass transit and rail freight subcommittee in the assembly. In Congress, I've been very active on all the same issues, plus most civil rights and civil liberties issues. I led the opposition to the Patriot Act back in 2003. I helped write the Freedom Act of 2015, which cut back on the surveillance aspects of the Patriot Act. I have always fought for LGBTQ legislation. As I think Brad noted, the repeal the Respect for Marriage Act, which we passed this week, I introduced 13 years ago and have pushed ever since. We finally succeeded in it. I've pushed for police reform. As chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I was instrumental in passing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. In gun reform, I was instrumental in passing the gun reform bills, the one that was passed into law, but far more stringent gun control legislation that we passed out of committee and passed in the House, but unfortunately didn't go anywhere in the Senate. 9/11 was in my district. I worked very closely with Carolyn as co-author with her of what became the Zadroga Act. I was the first person to say within a few days after 9/11 that the then mayor, Rudy Giuliani, and the then EPA Administrator, Christy Todd Whitman, were not telling the truth, were knowingly not telling the truth when they told people it was safe to go back to work when it clearly wasn't, when some of the environmental organizations were measuring the pollution in the air and the dust still on the ground were saying so. So I was saying, don't go back to work. And then led a fight to clean up the buildings, which were never cleaned up properly. And then starting about 2 years later, Carolyn and I worked on what became the Zadroga Act, the 9/11 Health program that we set up and that we funded, and that we finally passed. The Republicans I shouldn't say unanimously, almost unanimously, with the notable exception of Peter King of Long Island, opposed that bill. It took us till 2010 to pass it, and then we had to renew it and add funding to it in 2015 and 2020, and add funds just last year. We're still going to have to add more funds to it.
Gary, forgive me for interrupting, but I think I'm gonna ask you to wrap up because we want to make sure we get to our questions.
I'm about to wrap up. Let me just say that I'm chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be, unfortunately, ranking member, and I'm going to be in that capacity probably one of the leaders fighting back against McCarthy and Jim Jordan and their extremist ideas and phony investigations. And I look forward to working with the Parkers Village Tenants Association as I have with all the others in my district.
Thank you very, very much. Now we know a lot more about you, and that's good. So, Kristen, tell us a little about yourself, and what are you thinking for our community?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. It's so good to be here. I am Senator-elect for District 59, and I'm so excited to be really picking up where Senator Hoylman has left off, but certainly huge shoes to fill. And as you've seen today, a lot of incredible work and organizing has been done over the years. And actually, the first time that Susan and I met, we walked and took a tour of Stuytown. We talked about how movements are long, right? That the work that we do has to be consistent over years and years. And so I see today as really a passing of the torch and a commitment for us to continue that work and keep building a solid foundation for the next generation of tenant leaders and the next. So really excited to just be able to play a part in that as well. A little bit about myself. I currently live in Long Island City because our district is the only tri-borough district. So we go from Manhattan with Stuytown all the way up to the UN, and then in Queens and Astoria, Long Island City, and in Brooklyn in Greenpoint, Williamsburg. And as we set up and gear up for a 3-borough district, I'm really excited to say that we've hired staff, so we'll be very present. And I've been pushing the state Senate to get us office space in Manhattan. But as we've also heard with the need for really solid housing and rent regulation laws, the prices are skyrocketing, and we're still working with the state Senate as they are also sticker shocked by how pricey spaces can be in Manhattan. But I will certainly keep you all posted so that the minute we're up and running in January, we let you know where our office is when we have it. We give you the right contacts. And I want to make sure I'm still coming to these meetings as we balance, being in the district and in Albany. So, priority-wise, have our office set up. We're going to be focusing on housing and climate regulations. So specifically, we ran on the good cause eviction bill. I know that's something that's important for folks in Stuytown. That's certainly something I heard over the course of the campaign. So that is top of mind come January. And we're also going to be continuing to push for a Green New Deal for New York. So I'm incredibly excited to hear of the activism and history of activism Stuytown has, pushing back against power plants in the fossil fuel industry. And with a district that produces the majority of the city's energy, a lot of our meetings have been with those larger power plants in our district, talking about how we're going to move to renewable energy. And if you might have seen this, Governor Hochul announced it last week, but with our district, we recently signed a deal with Hydro-Quebec to have some hydro power, and that will be actually coming into Senate District 59. So incredibly exciting stuff, but excited to partner with all of you on that as well. But I'll pause there because I want to make it brief and definitely open to asking to any questions that you want to ask.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to say, for the right price, you can use my apartment as an office.
Honestly, it might take you up on that, Susan.
All right, we are now going to hear from, in this order, Harvey Epstein, Mark Levine, Keith Powers, and Kyle Atide. So Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan, and it is good seeing everyone. It's really hard to say goodbye to Senator Wellman and Congresswoman Maloney. They've been huge champions for all of us on the East Side, a huge champion for Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village, and Brad and Caroline talked about some of our amazing victories, and it's really been an honor to work with both of them. And then we're also fortunate at the same time to be with Senator-elect Gonzalez joining us and Congressman Nadler to really serve this community. We're going to have new fighters for the things that we've been fighting for decades in Stuytown and Peter Cooper Village. And I know Brad mentioned the STPA, which was landmark legislation. And I think the folks who are on it who weren't involved in that struggle, they should really thank the Tenant Association for their leadership. It was a huge victory for tenants across the state, for the millions of New Yorkers, and not just for rent stabilized tenants, for other tenants around the rest of the state who got huge benefits from the HSTPA. But like in every law that we pass and everything we change, sometimes we got to go back and look at things we didn't cover. And some of those things are affecting Stuytown right now. One really big issue is the Frankensteining apartments. So people know that, when you're rent regulated, the landlord, when they have the apartment vacant, can't reset the rent. They have to look at the rent stabilized rent. They can do some minor individual apartment improvements and do a modest increase. But there's an exception to that. What's called, we call Frankenstein apartments, when you combine two apartments, subdivide apartment, or take a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom and flip it, make one 1-bedroom, 1 and 2-bedroom. They can then reset those rents for market rent. So we've been working with HCR. They recently held hearings around removing the Frankensteining, the way to really skirt rent regulation. The hope is that these regulations will come into effect soon, because it's a huge loophole and HCR knows it. So, and I know the tenant association was there and supportive, and of course was testifying on your all behalf, and I was there testifying as well. But this is something that we really need to stay in front of. Other battles to come, is obviously MCIs is something that affects Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village regularly. We're battling with the property owner. I don't know, what do you think, Susan? 50 MCIs right now. And so we really need to come back and push for more MCI reform. As people know, in 2019, we took it down from 6% to a lower percentage of 2%, and said was MCI-able. But there's broader fights that we need to have around, one, whether they should be eligible for MCIs at all, and what is MCI, and what the cost for those MCIs is going forward. I think there's some real opportunities. And finally, I don't have a lot of time, but I just want to talk about legislation that we're doing around making sure HCR has more power. Right now, there's a tenant protection unit at HCR, but they don't have enough resources to do the investigations that are necessary. We also want to make sure when there's fraud that there's ways to discover the fraud, access to those rent histories. So tenants move into an apartment, they can apply to get their rent histories. But if there was fraud going back many years, or someone wants to organize in the building to get those rent histories, that's not available to everyone except for the current tenant. So we're looking at legislation to help that out, to really help tenant associations like your strong tenant association to do the type of organizing work necessary to protect tenants all over the city. And finally, I think we have some real opportunities to do a statewide Section 8 program. We haven't had one. We've had federal Section 8, but we know there are tenants in Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village, and all across our city and state that need rental support. We have an opportunity with a decent surplus in the budget today to talk about long-term support for tenants in New York State who need the rental support that they deserve. So again, if you want to reach out, Chanel from my office is here. Please reach out. And Kristen, if you want to come outside the district, you can always use my office on Avenue B. So we're only 7 blocks south of your district, so it's not that far. I'm sure Senator Kavanaugh won't mind. We're happy to have you anytime you want. And I look forward to continuing working with you all. And I'm looking forward to working with the new members, Congressman Nadler and Senator-elect Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, Harvey. Just quickly, apropos of Frankensteining, we're now starting to see apartments that we've never seen before, with numbers that we've never seen before. Here they go from A to G. All of a sudden, we've started to see K's and M's and things of that nature. So it's definitely happening here.
Yeah, no, we see it happening not just in Stuytown. We see it happening throughout the district, and HCR can't move quick enough. We got to make sure that these regulations go into effect because the fraud is nonstop.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now our Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's great to see all of you. I'm relieved no one's wearing a Santa hat. We're off to a good start. It's really, Harvey's got one just out of the frame. Is that what he said? Okay, got it. We'll try not to get a picture of you with that, Harvey. Not good for your poll numbers. It's great to see you, Harvey, and Kristen, and Brad, and of course, Congressman Nadler. Great to see Keith, and really incredibly grateful to Congressmember Maloney, as well as Senator Hoylman for their years of service to this community. It's been a wonderful first year for me as your borough president, working with you. Actually, I had the pleasure of working with you, Susan, and many others in Stuytown prior to my time as borough president, back when I was in the city council serving as health committee chair, because this neighborhood has been, or this community has been on the forefront of the fight against COVID really from the early days, and still is. Grateful to you, especially Susan. It's been wonderful to stand with you in the fights of the past year, including against the cogen plant. All the electeds on this call were great. Shout out especially to Keith, who's just an incredible leader in that ultimately successful victory. Also was really proud to stand with you all during the city council redistricting fight. Keith, again, very active on that. There was a while there where the proposal had been to divide up the neighborhood and put Stuytown and Peter Cooper Village with a district in Queens. And while we're thrilled at our partnership in the new Senate district, and certainly thrilled with our new representative and Senator Toby Gonzalez, I don't think we felt that it made sense to divide up our city council lines that way, and was proud to testify along with many of you, and we won that fight as well. It's been great working with so many of you on the community board. We've counted actually 9 residents of Stuytown PCV who are members of Community Board 6. Of course, some of you are here today. Yourself, Susan, Sandro, Jonathan, all are great members. And Kyle, who's on as well, who's our new chair, is not a resident of Stuytown, but has been a wonderful chair so far. Really, CB6 is one of the best functioning boards in the city, in part because we have so many great leaders from Stuytown stepping up, and because Kyle has been so great as chair. If you are interested in joining the community board, applications just open for next year. So you can go to our website, manhattanbp.nyc.gov. If you want to fight for your community as a member of CB6, we'd love to have all of you apply. Just briefly, a couple of the issues I've been working on more broadly, not just in this community, but that I think will be very important here. We've put forward a package of policy proposals to deal with the rise of e-commerce delivery, which is clogging up streets all over Manhattan, in and around Stuytown as well. This is not going away. We're up to 2.5 million packages delivered every single day in the city. It's really impacting congestion. It's leading to double parking. It's obstructing sidewalks and bike lanes and bus stops and more. So we put forward some really good policy ideas, which we think will help to improve that. We've been working with our fellow borough presidents. All 5 of us have come together to call for the planting of 1 million more trees in our city, including around Stuytown, as a way to advance environmental resiliency, to cool neighborhoods on hot days, to deal with storm runoff. This is very much an equity issue because it does tend to be low-income communities of color which have fewer trees. But we'd love your ideas on where to plant trees in this neighborhood or any neighborhood, as we build momentum towards, we hope, getting a buy-in from this citywide. We were able to pass a bill in the city council to require the city to identify one location in every zip code to create a new public bathroom. We have a citywide shortage of public bathrooms. New York is way behind almost any other part of the country and the world, and we want to fix that. This is a public health issue. It's a quality of life issue. It's also an equity issue. Give us your ideas on where in the neighborhood you'd like to see a new public bathroom. The bill we passed, of course, Councilmember Powers was a co-sponsor and key in the passage. And now we get to do the important work of making this happen. Finally, because I know that Susan and so many others care about public health, I just want to let folks know that while we're much better off than we have been in almost any point in recent years, we are heading into some challenges this winter with a rise in COVID cases. We're now seeing about 4,000 a day. We had a big spike after Thanksgiving, as usually happens. Also seeing pretty intense flu season so far. I think probably everyone on the call knows someone who's gotten the flu. Hopefully you haven't, but we're weeks ahead of the usual peak for our flu seasons, and already we're seeing more cases than at any point in any of the last 4 or 5 years. And anecdotally, we think we're behind on flu vaccination as well. And then there's this third respiratory disease known as RSV, which is really hitting infants and to some extent seniors as well. All of it's putting quite a strain on our hospital system. I see Susan's asking to wrap up. So final plug for vaccination. Only 13% of New Yorkers have gotten the new COVID booster. So please, if you haven't, do it. Get your flu shot while you're at it. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. really grateful to be representing you and look forward to many more years of partnership. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm sorry to be merciless.
No, please do. Thank you.
Keith, talk to us.
My favorite thing to do. I'll just give you a few updates. I want to talk a little bit about housing because I know we were asked to talk about that, but just a few very quick points about stuff happening in the neighborhood, which is important since we all last saw each other. Number one is I know Susan and Ann were there, but we did an announcement at the CUNY Brookdale campus just 2 months ago now about an entire new science hub that they're going to develop there. And what's exciting about it is that we scrapped the old plan that it was going to be a sanitation depot, a sanitation garage, and going to bring in a new CUNY schools, a new high school, and an entire campus around life sciences, which is going to be a big opportunity for our city to kind of take a leap ahead relative to other cities. So that's very, very great. Would be remiss to mention, of course, that the efforts this year, which we talked about a lot, to defeat the CHP, and that is excellent, and we're very, very excited about that. I want to thank the TA about that. And two smaller things on the ESCR front, the Coastal Resiliency Plan, the construction, as people know, if you've been down to the river, is continuing. And I know it's not always pleasant, but the good news is they are going to reopen the northern half of the cove next month. We have actually recently asked them to put up lighting there, and I want to thank Sherry Kirschenbaum's family member, I'll just leave it at that, for her son, for raising the issue to us and help being able to get lighting up there. So when it opens, it'll be well lit and safer for everyone. And then also we just opened up yesterday a new dog run actually along the East River on 41st Street. A little far, but Kyle was there and brought his dog. So for residents up that way, it's a really nice little new dog park for our furry friends here. On the housing stuff, in addition to everything that's happening in Albany, where most of the tenant protection fights are happening here, there is good news in the city, which is that we are on a record-breaking pace in this first year of the new council, the new mayor, of developing affordable housing. We have approved a number of projects that are going to bring substantial new affordable housing to the city, all over the city right now. We have actually approved probably more affordable housing units in 1 year than I think we've done in recent memory. We're driving, so we're kind of where the rubber hits the road. We are when those projects have to come through the city council to get approved. And as people know, I'm the majority leader of the council, and myself, the speaker, and our colleagues have been driving a very, very strong conversation around putting much more to affordable housing in than we normally get. I think many of us are sick and tired of seeing just these new buildings going up and not even having any, or not having nearly enough housing that can be affordable to New Yorkers. And so we are driving a big conversation right now about housing. The mayor did a plan, which you can go on his website and see, about changing some of the rules around how you do housing here in the city and make it easier. But what we are doing is saying, when you show up and you want to build it, to ask for much more. We want to get new housing on track, but we don't want to do it without really having strong protections for affordable housing. And we're not talking about the affordable housing as just out of reach for people and looks like it's market rate. We're talking about real substantial affordable housing to address our housing crisis, our homelessness crisis, and much more. I think in the next year, we're going to have a lot more to say about some things around tenant protection and ways to address other parts of that equation. But I'm very, very proud of what we're doing here. And I want to thank the borough president always for being a good advocate on that front, and in our borough talking a lot about, generational needs of this city. So I'll be back with more updates on that front, hopefully, as we are kind of moving through next year and have a number of bills on this. And I know time is an issue, so I'll leave it at that, and I'll wait for Dan for questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Our next speaker is Kyle Attai, Chair of Community Board 6.
All right. Good morning. Well, I guess good afternoon now. And thank you to Susan and to the rest of the association for welcoming me today. I know I've met most of you in person, but it is wonderful to return and connect with everyone virtually. And like everyone, I just want to start off by thanking Representative Maloney and Senator Hoylman, and especially your staffs for your advocacy, action, results in the community, and really looking forward to the new representation. But I just wanted to start off with that because it is the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one. So my name is Kyle Thide, and I'm the chair of Manhattan Community Board 6, for those of you who do not know me. But more importantly, I'm born and raised in the neighborhood, and I actually went to middle school at MS 104. So Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village has always been very, very close to my heart. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the community board actually spans from 14th Street to 59th Street, from the East River to as far west as Madison Avenue in some areas. The board is comprised of 50 volunteers from the district who are appointed by the borough president in partnership with our local city council members. And as a board, we review and make important decisions on many local issues. This includes land use and zoning, sidewalk cafes, liquor licenses, and we also support our local schools, transportation issues, public health, and public safety, among so much more. And most importantly, we also advise our city council members and the mayor on the city's budget and other issues. Now, for like many years, the community boards have been viewed almost as an extension of political clubs or as an elected official's office, but we are in fact a city agency and a nonpartisan entity. And under my leadership for the last 3 years, I have tried to transform our role in the community to that of a think tank. So a place where ideas can be shared, cultivated, and ultimately implemented for the betterment of our community. And our board has always been a friend, ally, and partner of Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village, which was recently demonstrated by the defeat of the power plant plans. The residents came to our community board, brought it up in committee levels. We worked with our elected officials, our agencies, to make sure that that did not happen. And so that is an example of how our board and committees amplify the voice of our residents. And we always stand in solidarity with the community to ensure happy and healthy living. And I think both of our groups, the community board and the tenants associations, and the rest of the guests who are here joining by YouTube, we're tremendously lucky to count many of the same people as our members. These individuals are continuously advocating for residents, and Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village issues are always well represented in board matters, as well as every other issue in the community. So if there are any issues that you feel or experiencing, however big or small, please know that the community board will always hear you, will always follow up, will always collaborate, and will always get results in partnership with our electeds and our agencies. We will be discussing all of the issues mentioned by our electeds here today, especially the recent Brookdale deal, which impacts many of the communities in this neighborhood. Beyond Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village, it will be a big, big project. And the next year will be focused on public input. So please, please, please participate. And if you are interested in attending a meeting, please visit our website, cbsix.org. And our next full board meeting is actually this Wednesday, the 14th. So I'd love to see you there. And if you'd like to contact me personally, you can feel free to reach me at kyle@cbsix.org. And as the borough president mentioned earlier, I, as the board chair, I'm always recruiting new perspectives on the board. The application is now live. So if you are interested in joining, please take a look at that. It is absolutely important for you to be involved in your community board. I always say that you don't have to be political, but you should be civic. And the community board is a great way to do that. So Susan, as a community board chair, I know the importance of time, so I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I look forward to any questions. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. So before I talk about the questions, when I was naming board members, Sandro, did I name you or did I leave you out?
You did
Sandro
leave
is
me
a-
out, but that's okay.
Sandro made all of this
Hi.
possible. All right, so on to the questions. There were several questions and most of them ended up being in one of three major categories with some other miscellaneous. And the categories are safety, transportation, and rent. So I'm not going to read each and every question because in many instances they kind of repeat themselves, but I'm going to combine some of them. People are concerned with respect to safety that they perceive a rise in major crime in New York City and particularly in our neighborhood. So A, does the mayor have any plan to address this? And B, everyone on the panel has been invited to say what they feel they're going to do to end the violent crime epidemic. Okay.
I'm happy. Want me to jump in?
Please.
I'm happy to start.
Please.
Look, in a very, very important topic, and undoubtedly one that is on the top of everybody's minds. And it's violent crime, but it's also day-to-day stuff that, I think we get calls about all the time. And of course, the shootings and things like that. I think if folks have been reading the news in the last few weeks, you've seen a number of updates. There's a lot of details to parse through and a lot of conversation to be had. We talk about a number of items. One is on subway safety, when we talk about folks who have mental health needs, that there's, I think, an epidemic around serious mental health right now in this city, and we're seeing it on our streets, ways to address that. And we are starting to see some good progress when it comes to safety on the subways and the decline of shootings here in the city. But I think that we need to really be persistent in our approach here post-COVID to make sure that we are addressing what I think have been serious issues, violent crime, unintended needs of people that have a need when it comes around mental health. And I think we're starting to see progress. Progress is good, but it's not where we need to be at this point in time. And, we have been in my office, we tell folks all the time when there is a need that's emerging in any particular area, and we can talk about areas around here too, to, be in touch with our office so that we can get the necessary resources out there. For a lot of us too, the decline in certain areas wasn't just about crime, it was also about sanitation and other needs here in the city, and we're doing our best and doing everything we can to address those. And we're going to have some, hopefully even more announcements in the future out of my office about, doing more outreach around homelessness, trying to do more ways to help get people housed that need it, because we get a lot of calls about that as well. So I think we are making progress. I think we're seeing that there's still a lot of work to do. And I'm grateful that folks are having these debates about, I know also having these discussions around new ideas and policies to get our city back on track. I think COVID was clearly a breaking point for the city as we, shut everything down, basically left everyone sort of unattended to that might have a need, and obviously had another issues, courts being slowed down and things like that. So I think we are seeing progress, but I'm always happy to talk to folks about specific things in and around the neighborhood and the district that they feel like need more attention. And we're always trying to work with local precincts and the NYPD citywide about areas where there might be a need to attend resources to. And we'll talk about 14th Street, I think, too, because I know it's on top of people's mind, but we've been walking around this area with some of the captains and folks to look at areas that just feel like they have been unattended to. So if folks want to continue to reach out to us, we're always happy to try to do our best to marshal resources to areas where it's most needed.
Do any of the other elected representatives want to say anything, or shall I move on? Okay, I'll move on. Keith briefly touched on 14th Street, but we got a number of questions regarding the situation. For those who are not in our community, there's been what some categorize practically a third world open market between First Avenue and Avenue A on 14th Street. And there's been a lot of attempts to clean it up, and some days it's fine and other days it's not. And people are still feeling really rather uncomfortable about that area. And one of the questions that came in is why can't the 13th precinct extend its reach to the south side of 14th Street? I don't know if this is within the realm of possibility, but it's an idea that came up.
But Susan,
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
it's not whether it's the 13th or the 9th precinct. That's not the issue.
Right.
The issue is what enforcement looks like, and how do we work with the church, who has the right to have people inside the church area to do that kind of vending, and work with the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection to make sure that they're doing the appropriate education enforcement. What we did also was we brought the street vendor project out to 14th Street so they could educate street vendors on what the rules and licensing situations on street vending. So we just want to make sure that people who vend do it appropriately and legally, but also make sure that it's safe for everyone in the neighborhood. And I think it just requires ongoing diligence. I know Keith and Carlina have been on top of it, and we've gone out numerous times with lots of agencies to talk about what's going on. This is just going to become diligence, not just there. This is not the 14th Street is not the only place this is happening. This is happening all over our city in lots of neighborhoods. We have to be mindful. There's a lot of people who are in poverty and are selling things, and a lot of people who want things that are purchased that are non-market. So they wouldn't be there if people weren't buying things, right? And
Totally.
they wouldn't be there if it wasn't a receptive place. So we just have to we have to do a better job, and it requires regular enforcement and multiple agencies. And unfortunately, the city hasn't provided the ongoing support necessary, whether to the consumer affairs, making sure the street vendor project got out there and do education, and police enforcement when people can't follow the rules. I don't know, Keith, if you wanted to, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, look, I live here and I walk it all the time, and there's probably not a day where I see something. First of all, I want to say diligence. I don't know if you have some members of the tenant association who have been great about just flagging issues for me almost on a daily occasion. And so we've actually been good and able in real time to be able to get resources out there. Look, it's not where it wants to be. I think living here, I can say pretty solidly that it's gotten a lot better, especially on First Avenue than where it was. There are issues that continue to pop up, but what we have, I just want to give people an update what's going on right now. And this is something that we really had to drill with the new administration in, is we have dedicated agencies going out there multiple times a day. We will, if you walk there right now, I just was out there before the meeting just to check on it. And you know, there's a PD squad car out there, and they're walking up and down looking for any potential issues. I am also flagging constantly for the Department of Sanitation to the commissioner anytime there's a need to go out there and do additional sweepings and things like that. It's a little difficult because they may come and then leave and come back, and those things pop up. Where we need help is always with Immaculate to be able to address the flea market conditions. We've not been able to get a really solid response from them at this point. I've talked to Archdiocese, I've talked to them as well. The corner of 14th Street, we've been working with T-Mobile and McDonald's and those stores to help get better clearances there. And I think right now, if you go out there, it's usually in pretty good shape. It's the mid-block now where we're seeing issues pop up again. And even yesterday, I had folks go out there and doing it. And you will see, if you look more often, you'll see either 9th Precinct or another car out there. I think it's a good question about 13th versus 9th, but but I don't think that that's going to solve the issue. I think it's whoever is in charge needs to be out there and just having a steady presence there. And what we ask them to do is go out and give warnings, try to ask people to move. You don't have to, write tickets and do enforcement on the first round. Go and see if you can move people out there. What we've had out there for a while is a steady and dedicated just car park there. I think they're doing regular rounds now. But I was out there, I think it was the day before Thanksgiving, with one of the captains for the Midtown unit that oversees the whole sort of area, to walk it. I'm in basically daily communication with them just to make sure they know what's going on, and obviously walking it there. So I don't think the problem is going to be solved by changing the precinct. I know people have raised that. I think it's going to be about just making sure folks are there. And also, as Harvey said, it's helpful when Homeless Services goes out there. But it's not totally a DHS issue. It's helpful when sanitation goes out there. So we're trying to do all of the above, but it has helped. I'm just being frank, when we have a steady enforcement of the PD side out there, and just at least making sure they're walking up and down the block to see if there's any issues that are popping up, because it was unacceptable what was going on, even a few months ago and during COVID and things like that. But I think we have turned the corner on it, but we are being persistent about it. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not sort of looking at it, taking pictures of it, making sure what's going on making sure I know what's going on.
Thank you very much. I personally have seen an improvement, so we'll just hope that we keep seeing improvements. All right, let's move on to transportation, and a topic that has produced a lot of anguish and pain for not only this community, but people south of 60th Street, is the idea of congestion pricing. And I know that, there needs to be some way to be able to fund the MTA, but people who live below 60th Street really feel that it's an extra tax. They feel that, that it's punishing people who are not able for one reason or another to take public transportation, perhaps because of their health issues or other issues. And they, we want, why will there be special consideration? Will there be a discount, decent discount for people living in the zone? What about for seniors with cars parked in garages? It's a problem. So I'd like some thoughts about it.
I could jump in on, go ahead, Art, if you want to start, I'll follow you.
No, Mark, I can take the state perspective. You can do the city
Go ahead,
perspective.
you can start because I know you have a bill on this and I'll follow you.
Yeah, okay, so just to be clear, back in 2019, we passed this. I'm a supporter of congestion pricing, but I push for a residential exemption. And while we weren't successful getting that residential exemption, we got a residential exemption for people under $60,000. After we passed that, Brad and I introduced a bill to have a higher income residential exemption. We understand below 60,000, knowing that lots of people who in the neighborhood shouldn't have to pay to drive home, and so that's what Brad and I are still pushing on that bill. At this point, it doesn't look like it's moving forward in 2023. The earliest we're seeing is 2024, and I understand why people don't want to pay to drive home. Congestion pricing is about people driving to work and commuting to work. This is not what this is about. This is a really different thing for the residents of our district. So I'm not giving up this fight. I'm going to continue to push for getting more residential exemptions, and it is in my hope that we keep talking about it, that they're going to hear it. And I know Brad and I are going to continue to fight for it. Again, I'll say that we need to do something about climate. And so Mark and I, can I just raise this? I've been talking about like residential parking too, as a way to get more cars off the street. That this is something, if we get more residential parking, that will make like another disincentive for people to drive into the neighborhood. And I think there's a lot of things that we need to be doing to get people out of their cars and onto public transportation. But at the same time, we need to create disincentives for people to drive into our district. Sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to take your thunder.
Not at all good stuff, Harvey. Thank you. I just want to very briefly, in like 20 seconds, touch on the public safety themes, which came up so much and I didn't have a chance to weigh in on. While there's no doubt there's more progress needed on 14th Street, I think the progress that we've made so far, thanks to really hard work by Keith and Harvey and others, does reflect the kind of multi-front approach that we need, where certainly there's a need for the precinct to be present on the ground to enforce when appropriate, but that we also need to surge in a variety of other agencies to deal with some of the broader social problems there, whether it's homelessness or mental health, et cetera. And it's hard to ignore the failures of our mental health system, which are underlying so much of the challenges we're seeing on 14th Street and around the city. A system which is desperately short of inpatient psychiatric beds, leaving people on the street because they just can't get the kind of treatment they need. There's only one long-term psychiatric care unit in the whole public hospital system. It's at Bellevue. It has 19 beds. That's it. I could go on that if we have time, but we need a multi-front approach there on 14th Street and beyond. On the question of congestion pricing, really important topic. We have multiple crises we have to address in transportation right now in the city. Congestion is out of control in Manhattan. There are many streets at peak hours where traffic is moving at slower than walking speed. That's not hyperbole. We're talking traffic moving at slower than 4 miles an hour. And it is seriously impeding emergency response times. It is slowing FDNY and ambulance response times in the core zone. It's a drag on economic activity. It's a huge environmental challenge because of the impact on climate and air quality and more. We also have a severely underfunded mass transit system, and we just need billions of investment in upgraded signaling and new train stock and more accessibility in stations, et cetera, et cetera. Transit is a lifeblood for Stuytown. So I know you know this, but there are really no shortcuts there. We need billions invested to fix those problems. And congestion pricing helps with everything I just identified. We need to make sure that it's fair in the way it's implemented and priced. And those details are yet to be worked out. The Transit Mobility Review Board is charged with deciding some of the critical details about how much is charged at what times for what kind of vehicles and to whom that impact Stuytown in really important ways. And there's also a legislative push on that as well. It's important to remind folks that people who are registered as disabled are exempted from this. And it's important to remind folks that there is a carve out for people who are low income. Currently, it's lower than I think a lot of people want. It's $60,000 a year, in which you're totally exempt. And Harvey and others are working on bills that would raise that. There's also the possibility of blanket reductions for all people who live in the zone. This is the kind of thing that Transit Mobility Review Board is considering. Also questions about peak versus non-peak as well, which I think will be really important for Stuytown, because generally folks are traveling against the flow. And so you want a pricing system that has lower fees for people who are going against the flow of traffic during peak, et cetera, et cetera. So I would really love to hear from all of you on this, because we are in constant communication with the Transit Mobility Review Board as they're working through these policy details. I'm obviously in constant communication with Harvey and others who are and soon to be State Senator Gonzalez, who are working on this on the legislative front. And finally, I'll just mention that I'm working very, very hard on a policy to allow for residential parking permits in New York City for neighborhoods that choose it. Every other city in the country has this, or at least the other 9 of the top 10 cities in the country have this, and New York does not. This would eliminate the problem of people from other parts of the region dumping their cars on our local streets because they don't want to pay for a parking garage. It's crowding out local residents. It's happening in and around Stuytown as well. We're really pushing. We have legislation in the council that Keith is leading on. Harvey's got a great bill on this in Albany. So more on that, but I do think it's more important than ever as we approach the implementation of congestion pricing. I went a long time on that. Thank you for allowing me, Susan, to touch so many topics.
You're welcome. Kristen, I think you want to say something about this.
Thank you so much, Susan. I just wanted to say, I very much appreciate everything that, our council member, assembly member, and borough president have said. Ultimately, I've let them do the talking. You've all been working on this for so long, and we're so lucky to have folks like you at all levels of government fighting for Stuytown, fighting for residents. But really what I wanted to highlight is that, a lot of these things are symptoms of larger systemic issues. And so where I'm really excited is to, on the state level, fight for really addressing the root of the problem, right? So if we want to reduce homelessness, we need affordable housing, right? We need deeply, truly affordable housing. We need to protect places like Stuytown and keep as many rent stabilized units as possible, right? If we want to see folks who aren't struggling with mental health crises on the street, we need to increase funding for mental health services, right? When we've seen that decrease. If we want to reduce the amount of traffic, we also need, and I'm so happy our borough president pointed this out, we need deep investment in mass transit. And that's also something that I'll be working on with a block of state legislators in the Assembly and in the Senate on a suite of MTA bills this year. So, I just really do appreciate their leadership on this, but we all deserve to feel safe, and Stuytown doesn't deserve to bear the brunt of all of these systemic issues. So just wanted to kind of contextualize that and say that as much as we're doing the immediate, we're all also committed to working on those longer term fixes so that we're getting to the root.
Thank you very much. While we have more questions on this major topic, I'm going to have to move us along. So I'd like to get into rent and rent regulation status. So Harvey, you already talked about closing some of the loopholes in the new rent law, so that's fine. But somebody asked, and this is kind of an important question, what they're worried about the lottery apartments. Now, for those who may not know, there's a category of tenancy that are lottery apartments, and there are at least 300 of them now in Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village, perhaps more. And they're not entirely understanding whether or not they're considered under the new rent laws, rent regulated, and they're worried about, what's going to happen in 2035. So I will just say that, our motion for declaratory judgment is certainly going to have a lot to do with what happens in 2035. But, Harvey, if you could say something about whether or not the lottery apartments are covered by rent regulation.
So, yeah. So just to be clear, I think all of us on this call think that all the units in Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village are covered by rent stabilization. In 2019, when we made the changes to the rent laws, we specifically, Brad and I specifically at the time, were focusing on Stuytown and Peter Cooper Village to ensure expiring J51, any kind of HPD regulatory agreements, all those units, if they were subject to rent regulation because they were 6 or more built before 74 and they were regulated, they would continue to be regulated. That's why when, I don't remember, Keith, when we sat down with Blackstone, maybe it was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and they said they didn't think those units were regulated. Right before COVID, so it's got to be 3 years ago now, right? That we said, so it was our intent as a legislature to make sure those units are regulated, and that's why we encourage the Stuytown Tenant Association to affirm sue them to get in front of this issue. So those units we believe are regulated. I mean, obviously, a judge will determine whether what we wrote into legislation they agree with. But there's nothing in that I've heard from anyone, any of the lawyers, whether from the Attorney General's office who represents the state or from the lawyers who represent the Tenant Association, who thinks that the case is going in any other direction. We think they're regulated. The statute thinks they're regulated. The Attorney General thinks they're regulated. Your lawyer thinks they're regulated. It's just Blackstone who wants to do whatever they can to get these units under rent regulation. And we are here to fight them to ensure they remain subject to rent regulation, because that was our intent as a legislature. Susan, you're muted.
Okay. So the next question is also about what happens, how long would, if the court rules in favor of the tenants in terms of the motion for declaratory judgment, how long would that decision remain in effect? And I guess the answer is, if we prevail, all units will be covered by rent regulation until possibly the law changes in Albany.
Law changing, or I suppose a different decision that a court would render. But I think, however, it's fair to say if we win the lawsuit, then those are in perpetuity unless there is a change to something, a law or decision.
Okay, next question for you, Keith. We've been told that scree injury is underutilized in Stuytown Peter Cooper Village. Will you do a special outreach effort? I would love to, and we would happy to do something. I think my staff has already reached out to the Department of Finance about doing an event. And just know we get a list of folks that have not replied frequently, and my office actually has done it and will and does do
individualized outreach to people to make sure that they sign up, because we know that is a lifeline, and don't want to make sure somebody didn't miss it. So there is some outreach going on, but we are always happy to do more, and I think my staff is going to work to set that up, and we'll work with the other electeds to do that as well.
And the other thing, Keith is and happy, I'm sure all of us are happy to co-sponsor that. But if they're, obviously we always hear about tweaks to screen injury, and I think Kristen and I could, we're hearing messages, Susan, from the tennis association. We're happy to continue to think about legislative changes. I know we have bills already to try to increase the threshold above $50,000, as index it to CPI. There are things that, if you're seeing, Susan, that we can be helpful with, in addition to the outreach. I think that's what we're here for.
And just one more update. I think my staff has said that probably early in the next year, we're trying to get something set up to do that, to do an event.
Okay, now there were a couple of miscellaneous questions, but the people to whom they were addressed have left, so we will bypass that. I just want to say we had several quality of life questions, but a lot of them just involve the Tenants Association speaking with management. For example, apparently there's the truck that's like a sample apartment set up that used to go around the boroughs seems permanently parked on the 16th Street loop.
It is. I just ran past it the other day when I was on a run.
So we need to bring that to management's attention. There's been a lot of stolen packages, and the question came up about cameras in the stairwell. We will speak with management about that. And somebody wanted to know if we can get the management to advertise, this is a good one, free sweep installations for complaints about secondhand smoke. Again, we haven't had an opportunity to meet with management this month. We're going to very soon, and we will bring all of these issues to their attention. So at this point in time, I think we've gone past noon, and I think people are thinking of their brunches or their SantaCon visits. So I will thank everybody for tuning in, and thank all of our elected representatives from joining us today and giving us good information, and Kyle for Community Board 6.